Hello everyone and welcome back. In this video, I'm going to talk to you about the Baker Act, but from a little bit of a different angle here. So one of the calls that we had recently dealt with a family who has a loved one that has been Baker Acted, I think it's 3 or 4 times now, over the period of 2 years. And there's clearly a mental health issue going on. And what the family said to us was, well, we're afraid to call the police now. We're afraid to call 911 because, pretty much every time we do, this person gets Baker Acted. And, my response to them was, look, I get it. It's very frustrating when, you call the police and maybe you don't want your loved one taken to a facility or a hospital. But that's what the Baker Act is designed for. And I know I put a lot of content out there about how misused the Baker Act is. And as you know, it happened to a family member of mine and I was there when it went down. But when it's used correctly, the Baker Act is a very powerful life-saving tool. Now, if you're going to call 911 because you believe that there's an emergency present, then most of the time, what's going to happen is that the police are going to come down and maybe there'll be paramedics there or maybe they won't, but the police are going to show up and they're going to have to make a determination as to whether or not your loved one meets criteria under the Baker Act statute. And they have some discretion as to whether or not they do or they don't. But ultimately, if your loved one is removed and taken to, a facility, in other words, if the police do Baker Act this individual, we always have the option if it, if it looks like maybe the detention was not, done correctly, or you just want to make sure they get help somewhere else other than a Baker Act facility, we always have the option to go into court and seek relief from a judge. Right? That's why we have courts so we can air our grievances and seek relief from the court. But my philosophy is I'd rather be sorry for what I did do than what I didn't. And what I don't want to do is, is be in a situation where I have a loved one who's in crisis and I'm afraid to call the police, so I don't. And then something tragic happens. They harm themselves or they harm somebody else. And so that's my feeling and that's my position on this. If you think that this person is in crisis, then yeah, pick up the phone and call 911. That's what it's there for. That's what the Baker Act is there for. And if there's an issue afterwards, yeah, we'll address it with the court and we'll seek some relief. I mean, most of the time, when we file these petitions to get people out who either shouldn't be there or who want to make sure that they control their own medical and mental health decisions, most of the time we're able to get them out pretty quickly. And of course, it's on a case-by-case basis, but typically 1 or 2 days, we're out. Okay. Now, if the facility decides to fight, that's a different story. And I put out at this point probably a couple hundred videos on why the facility may want to fight. But at the end of the day, if you've got somebody in crisis, please don't be afraid to pick up the phone and call for help. That's what the statute's designed for. In any event, if you do have a loved one that's in crisis, there are other options other than the Baker Act. And I will talk about that in another video. So tune in. With that said, I appreciate you checking out the video. Please give us a thumbs up. Please subscribe to the channel. And I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.